YouTube? Welcome back to the Allegheny Northern. I thought I'd do something a little different today. Do a scenery video. A lot of the comments that I get online is about the autumn and winter scenes. So I thought I would show you how I put those together. What I've noticed online when I look at what other people have done, especially with fall, they don't quite capture the essence of the season. So what I mean by that is you can go to a hobby shop and you can get trees that are bright oranges and bright reds and yellows and stick them on your layout and they almost look toyish because a real autumn is not that bright. And if it is, it's bright for a day, maybe two at most, and then it starts getting brown and gray. Growing up in Southwest Pennsylvania, which is where my layout is fictitiously modeled, we get the four seasons here. Autumn is one of my favorite times of the year. It's very difficult to capture the look of those mountainsides, but you have to remember that it's not all colors. In fact, a lot of it is green still, and you'll get areas that, well, there might be some color, but by and large there's also a lot of green mixed in. And then even the colors that are there, they're not bright, vibrant colors necessarily. They're usually more muted. You will get one or two trees or plants that really stick out, but something like that is more what you're going to see. That's more going to be your yellow, and that's sort of how the hillsides are going to look. And even more, they almost start to look uniform, because you're going to get the same type of species for the most part that's going to grow up in an area. So you're not going to have trees that are turning multiple different colors all over the place on every hillside. It's just not what happens. You can go online and you can search for pictures, and you will find pictures that look like that. And I'm sure that some areas maybe see more color than others. But here in Southwest Pennsylvania, this is more what autumn looks like. The leaves are on the ground, the trees are bare, it's cold, it's dark, and it's pretty gross. A lot of rain, a lot of sleet, kind of icy conditions. And so if you're gonna model that area, then you need to be able to capture that realistically. And the way I do it is not necessarily simple, but it's effective. So for the dead trees, I simply take a super tree armature and I plant it. There's nothing special that happens to it. It just goes right into the ground. What I try to do is I don't want to waste what I consider the good trees. So the trees that are going to get the leaves, those are not the trees that I'm going to use. I'm going to take the rejects, the pieces that aren't quite right. I'm going to group them together in multiples, and I'm going to stick them all in the same hole in the scenery. And what I end up with is some pretty convincing trees that may not look good with leaves on them, or may not look good standalone, but together they make a nice backdrop for an autumn scene. The next thing that I do is the static grass. By the time the leaves are on the trees, the grass is pretty much dormant. It's not really green, it's more of a brown, maybe a yellow. If it is green, it's very light green. But you still do have some things that are green. You're going to get tufts that are going to be green, so little weeds that are sprouting out, they're going to be green. You may get some shrubs that are still green. So it's not that everything is dead, but a lot of it is. So you need to use the muted colors. Now, here at the engine terminal, what I'm going to model is a scene that has had some snow. So if you get snow, it's going to get moved. It's going to get moved relatively quick, just so that employees and visitors and that sort of thing, don't have a tripping hazard. Plus, it's in the way of working. The piles are the last thing that melt because they're the biggest. So if you get a snowstorm over a weekend, Monday morning they're plowing it, most of the snow's gone by Tuesday, but the piles are going to be there. So that's what we're going to model here. Is there was a snowstorm, most of the snow's gone, but it's going to be in the piles, and it's going to be where the sun isn't getting to. So if this hillside, for instance, was facing the sun most of the day, it's going to be melted. But on the flip side, where it's seeing less sun, or maybe no sun depending on how it's oriented, there's still going to be snow on it. So you have to think about the scenery, and I really recommend that if you haven't been to the Northeast or the Mid-Atlantic during these seasons and you're trying to model them, you schedule a trip, make it a rail fanning trip, go see what that scenery looks like for real. Because although winter is gray and it's dark and it's gloomy, there's a lot of colors still there that you need to be able to capture to realistically model the scenery. So follow along as I show you how I do it here on the Allegheny Northern. So first and foremost, let's talk about the products that we're going to be using. Now, I know that the first inclination is, okay, put the scenery down, sprinkle some snow over it, call it winter. And you can do that. I mean, if you're setting up under a Christmas tree, if you're doing something for the kids, that's great. That'll work. But if you're looking for a more realistic touch, you're going to need some more products. First, and probably one that everyone is familiar with, is the Woodland Scenics Soft Lake Snow. So it comes in a shaker like the rest of their scenery products. It's good. It's useful. Not going to do a whole scene with it, but it does have its merits. Second, and a nicer product, a more fluffy product, is by Knock. It's I believe it's a German company. It's a sifted product. It does a lot better job of looking like fluffy, powdery snow. And then, of course, you're going to have the there's a company. It's in England. Is Deluxe Materials, and they make a product called Shovel Snow. They actually make an entire snow line. And from what I've seen, although I haven't used it, it looks pretty convincing, especially some of the ice products that they make. So shoveled snow is exactly that. It's great for making piled, trampled, shoveled, drifted snow. So we'll be using some of that, especially here since we're modeling drifted snow, plowed snow. The last time I used was more of a paste. This was available at a craft store here locally. You probably can find it online as well. It's sort of it's a good base. You could leave it alone just as it is. Look good on buildings and awnings and that sort of thing. We're going to use it as just a base and then build up upon it. And then there's two other products that I'm going to be using. The first is a gloss medium, and that's simply for the purpose of ice. A lot of people will use this for making water. In fact, it's what I use to make the water here on my layout. But it also, you can tint it a little bit with a little bit of white, a little bit of blue, make it look just like ice as well. And then there's also another product that is an ice crystal product that also will get the trick. It's got a little bit more crystal-like look to it, so it looks like, snow is melted and refrozen. So this is also another great product to use. That's what we're going to be using here, and now I'll show you exactly in which order we're going to go ahead and put this stuff all together. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm setting up where my snow is going to be using the Aleene's real snow, true snow is what it's called. So it comes in that jar that I was showing you earlier. It's got sort of a pasty look to it. And I'm just sort of massing where I'm going to have my snow mounds. I care a little bit about what this looks like because it's going to be somewhat visible, but I also don't care. I also don't care that those leaves are in there. I'm going to show you why here in a minute. But I want it to look basically like a mound because I'm going to build up upon that. Over here on the road, the path leading around the roundhouse turntable, I'm just putting a little bit off to the side, giving you the impression that some vehicles have been driving back and forth here. They're not going to plow a gravel road, obviously, because the road would end up at the end in a pile itself. But they do, just by the ruts of the vehicles and stuff, you're going to get some snow that is going to get pushed off to the side. And the other thing you want to do is just, you don't want it to look uniform. So taking the brush, stippling a little bit of snow, sort of in a random pattern to give it just a little bit of texture and a little bit of that winter look. You don't want it to look like you planned it, like you engineered it. So you want to avoid any kind of patterns because that's not how it would look in real life. Just brush the scenery over it. You don't care if you find a piece of loose material that gets stuck in your brush, because in real life, snow, especially when it's been plowed and driven over, it picks up whatever's underneath it. So leaves and dirt and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just trying to mimic that here a little bit. All right, so that's going to be as much of that base that we're going to put down here for now. So we've got some piles, and now it's time to make a little bit more snow as far as in the grass area goes, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so now we're using the shoveled snow product. That is the Deluxe Materials product, and as you can see, it looks like shoveled snow. Some of it gets pretty clumpy and looks exactly like this, which, unless you're modeling a very heavy snowfall that's really been plowed back, you would see big chunks like this somewhere along the railroad, possibly, up in the mountains, but not here in a parking lot. So by taking the edge of our spoon that we use to shovel this product out, we can just sort of break this into some smaller chunks. Now, because we're modeling a season that's sort of in flux here, so it's winter, but there's still some leaves laying around, there's still some color. You're not going to have a massive pile, so we're not going to do too much more than what we have here, just because as far as plowing goes, there probably wasn't a whole lot to plow. There wasn't a massive snowstorm. When we get out to areas like this where it's probably even shallower, we're gonna approach this a little bit differently, in that we're going to start with the soft flake snow and then add the shoveled snow. Here, our next step is to add some of this Woodland Scenic soft flake snow to blend it all together. Snow mounds, they now contain the Eileen's True Snow. They have the shoveled snow on top of that, and then a light dusting of the Woodland Scenics. Now, you see the problem with the Woodland Scenics right now in this view is, look how granular it is. Snow doesn't look like sand. Even dry snow does not look like sand. So that's not to worry. We're not going to leave that there. But you can understand now why that may not be the best product to use for something like this. But if you look at these piles, they look like something that's been shoved over. Something that's been pushed around. They have the jagged outcroppings of something that's been plowed, but there's also some soft snow, like it's melted and refrozen. So that's the look you're going for, to give it a little bit of, you're weathering your weather, basically, is what you're doing. Now when I bring you over here, here's a pile of the Woodland Scenic snow, and you can tell it looks like a pile of white sand. So I'm not going to leave it like that. I wanted you to see what it looked like, basically untouched, and why we're using multiple products. But I will show you here on the road. Now, that light granular look with the True Snow, it makes a pretty convincing little gravel road there. So we're not going to make any changes to that. We're going to leave that alone. It looks good, so that's done. I may go back with a little more of the shoveled snow for some deeper areas, but for now, we're good there. We're going to go ahead and fix this pile, and then we're going to get it all fixed in place. Okay, this is the last product that we are going to use today. It is ice crystals, and this is what it looks like. I applied it with the end of actually a carving knife, and got a real rough texture from it, because ice typically isn't going to be smooth, especially if it's something that people have been driving through or walking through. It's going to get a little slushy looking even when it dries. So that needs to dry. It'll dry a little clearer than it is now. It looks a little textured. It'll maintain that texture, but this is probably the area that's the most dry. That's what it's going to look like when it's done. Here it's a little thicker, so it's still trying to dry. And then I also put a little bit on the road. the service road, because that snow that's melting, it's gonna freeze and thaw throughout the next couple of days until it's completely gone. So creating a late fall, early winter scene, this is how I do it. So this technique can also be utilized going the other way if you're doing a winter into spring. This is another way. It's another set of scenery, and you're not going to have the fall colors. Obviously, it's going to be a lot grayer and more dead looking, but the technique for the snow would be the same.